The big bad of a year-long campaign meets her maker in an epic, overdue clash. Coming right up on FlavorText. Howdy, it's Cord. Today's diary is from one of my first campaigns from college, and one of the first I'd ever actually managed to finish. We'll be starting at the very end of this campaign, not because I don't want to talk about every phenomenally dumb thing my party did up until this point, but because the final session was the first one that the party really came into their own and got shit done. To put things simply, this party of 5 had been working with the rebels for several years to overthrow a corrupt monarch. It all culminated in a final battle in the castle, which was slowly slipping into a magical pocket dimension, becoming populated by demons and defenders of nature. It was a mess, but it made sense in context. Trust me. Anyway, it was a party of 5. I'm Orneal, the elven rogue, Goliath, the human fighter, Ileona, the half-elf druid, Cameo, the human sorcerer, and Lord Deathwing, the dragonborn ranger. Throughout the campaign, the party managed to get their hands on an absolute mess of magical items and otherwise. A magical sunblade, a self-poisoning dagger, armor that let the user breathe underwater, a sentient, bloodthirsty blade, a magic staff. All of which they never used effectively, but still had fun owning. That was up until the final showdown. They marched bravely into the castle, ready to deal with anything that got in their way, and they did it with flying colors. Every member of the party really came into their own and helped the party achieve victory. The druid talked down some elementals that guarded the entrance to the castle and requisitioned their help in advancing. The ranger and the fighter took down a couple of demons that barred access to the corrupt queen. The rogue surprised the queen's archmage and repaid an old debt with a knife in the back. And then, joining hands, the sorcerer and druid dove into the magical nexus to combat the dying archmage's soul and save the party from annihilation. And then, the queen made her entrance. She was powerful. I had been slowly building her arsenal in tandem with the parties as the adventure unfolded. She was ferocious. They didn't call her the Wolf Queen for nothing. She would be the ultimate tactical test. Could the party defeat someone who had been watching them since the start of their journey? She made her first move, diving at the weakened sorcerer who was spat out by the Nexus and completely alone. And he retaliated in kind. He shouted,
"I make an attack of opportunity!"
Which honestly made the table laugh. He had never once landed a melee attack against any singular target thus far, and hitting the queen herself was, well, a long shot for even the martially studied characters in the party. And so I asked, what weapon are you gonna use?
My staff.
Roll the hit.
No, I want to attack my staff.
What? Everything was out the window at this point. He had never once used this staff as more than a character prop, and now he wanted to attack it? So be it. It was his choice. The decision passed. He broke the staff over his knee just as the queen closed in on his position, and then we all learned what his plan was. You see, this particular staff had a finite number of charges, 30 or so, that could be consumed to cast spells. But upon breaking it, it would release all of them and deal about 10 damage per charge in a small nova. Cameo had never once used the staff to cast a spell. It still had all 30 charges. And so, in a blinding flash of glory, Cameo, the 40-odd health sorcerer, dealt 300 damage to everything within 10 feet, namely, himself and the Wolf Queen. She rolled her reflex save, and failed. But had legendary resistance, so she re-rolled it, and failed again. And then, she burned her villain point to re-roll yet again in order to foil Cameo and his expert plan. But managed to fail yet again. The party sat in stunned horror at the valiant sacrifice, mouths agape as the dust settled. And then he announced that upon breaking the staff, there was a 50% chance that he gets teleported to a random plane of existence instead of being cooked alive by his own attack. We all sat with bated breath. The whole table would have taken hands if we could move. His dice felt like they rolled for an hour. he rolled a 51. We rejoiced. The queen was dead and the sorcerer was alive to blow something else up. I had to sit there a moment before narrating the epilogue. This boss that I had been building up to for well over a year, returning to almost every week to tweak and perfect, was gone on the first turn of combat. And I had never been more proud. I actually yelled. I shouted in victory that the queen had been defeated and felt like a father at his kid's first soccer game. My party of rebels and wolf queen slayers had made it out both victorious and with all of their lives. The only question we all had now was, where did Cameo land?
The next course. A too clever for his own good rogue tangles himself up in his own web of deception. A complicated plan with a simple flaw. Coming right up on FlavorText.